Hello, this is a review of the Netflix documentary Making a Murderer. Unless you've been under a rock for the past few weeks, you've probably heard about this series, but in case you haven't, I'll do a brief summing up of it. What it is it's a 10-part documentary about the case of Steven Avery. Now, Steven Avery is a man from around Manitowoc, Wisconsin, and back in the 1980s, he was convicted of a attempted rape and assault that he was not responsible for, and he served 18 years in jail until DNA evidence exonerated him and he was released. And shortly after his release, I believe it was about a year later, he was a suspect in a murder of a young 25-year-old woman, and he eventually was convicted of her murder, and he is now serving a life sentence in prison. And his nephew, whose name is Brandon Dassey, he was also convicted of, I believe, of murder and mutilating a corpse, and he is also, I believe, serving, if not a life sentence, he's serving a real lot of time in prison. At the time, he was only 16 years old. I'll start off by saying, like most people, this program is one-sided in that it was made by people who believed that Steve Avery is innocent. However, it does raise a lot of important questions. After Steve was exonerated from the first crime that they had him in jail for, he decided that he was going to sue the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department because obviously he was wrongfully convicted. They ignored evidence from another criminal who eventually turned out to be the true rapist, and they basically railroaded him into prison for something that he didn't do. So he was suing the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department and two of the members of that department for $36 million. And it wasn't long after this that he suddenly became a suspect in the murder of a woman named Teresa Halbach. And Teresa Halbach was a 25-year-old woman. She was a photographer, and she came over to Steve's place to take a picture of a van that he was selling. And it was not long after this that she had disappeared, and after an extensive search, her vehicle was found on his property. Now, I should mention that the Avery family owns an auto salvage yard. It's a rather large one, and according to the documentary, the Avery family is not well liked in the area, so I think a lot of people have prejudice against him to begin with because of his family and so forth. And I think that had a lot to do with him being put in jail for the first crime, but we'll get back to that. Teresa Halbach's vehicle was found on his property, and later it was and when that took place, they cordoned off the whole area for 8 days, and they then searched the property, and they found that in a fire pit in his backyard, they found human remains, which later they said were the remains of Teresa Halbach, as if someone tried to burn the body to get rid of the evidence or whatever. So when they found these remains, they closed off the property for 8 days, and then they did an extensive search of the property, and they eventually found what they say is a bullet fragment with her DNA on, and they found the key to her vehicle in Steven Avery's bedroom, or this is a claim that's made. So again, Steven Avery is on trial, and basically it covers the trial. It shows, this is all original footage. This is a documentary. There's no actors or anything like that, and they basically follow his case from when he was released from the first murder, or first suspected murder, where he was innocent of, and they follow his case through, and Brandon Dassey's case through their trials and the aftermath. Some of the things that I find suspicious about this is, number one, Steve's fingerprints are not found on Teresa Halbach's vehicle. However, they do claim they found his blood in her vehicle. So how do you get your blood on something without getting your fingerprints on it? Did he have gloves on? Well, if he had gloves on, how did he get blood on the vehicle? His lawyers claim that the Manitowoc Sheriff's Department had a sample of his blood from the first crime and suspected crime, and that they planted this blood in her vehicle. Another point, the key that was found to her vehicle was found by one of the people that he was suing over his first wrongful conviction. This key was not found for several days until after this particular officer was on the scene, and he's the one that supposedly found it. To me, that's a conflict of interest. The Manitowoc Sheriff's Department people were not supposed to be on the property at all, and at least two of them were on the property, and the evidence, the important evidence, was found by these individuals. So I think that's a very, very, very strong conflict of interest right there. These people were due to be sued, and I believe the insurance for the county would not cover this lawsuit, so any lawsuit that Steve would have won would have come out of these guys' pockets. So these guys, they really have an incentive for framing this man. I find this to be very, very interesting. Whether you believe Steve is guilty or innocent, I think you should watch this. And it really does make me sad in a way, especially the first wrongful conviction of Steve, how this was handled. He was first involved because his cousin and him had a dispute, and his cousin was married to a sheriff's department member, and this kind of got him into the whole thing. To sum up the first case a little bit, a woman was jogging on the beach near Lake Michigan when she was grabbed by someone, dragged into the woods, and he attempted to rape her, and he beat her severely and almost killed her. And when she gave a description to the police, one of the sheriff's department deputies said, "That sounds like Steve Avery." To me, this is planting a thought in the witness's mind when you weren't there and you don't know, you didn't see the person, but you're, putting the idea in her mind as to who it was before you really know anything about the case. I find this miscarriage of justice right there. She did eventually pick Steve out of a lineup and claim that he was the person who did it. And after he served 18 years in prison, they rechecked the DNA evidence, and they found pubic hair, and this pubic hair belonged to another man, and this man had a long record of sexual assaults and violence, and it turned out that he was the actual assailant, and it was not Steve Avery. So if they could railroad this man into jail one time, I don't see where there would be a problem them doing it again, especially when a large sum of money is at stake here. Now, I don't know for a fact that he's innocent, and I would not want to have been on his jury, because you have to be certain to a moral certainty or whatever they say that someone is guilty, and I could not make a statement that I would feel that it's the moral certainty that I felt he was guilty based on what I've seen in this documentary. Obviously, I wasn't on the jury. There's a lot of movements right now to get Steve a new trial. There's several petitions that people are signing. They're trying to get Obama to do something about it. They asked the governor of Wisconsin to do something about it, and I guess both of them pretty much refused or whatever. I myself am from Wisconsin. I am not from Manitowoc County, but I am from Outagamie County, which is not that far away. And when this took place, I didn't pay that much attention to it. All I knew was what the media was saying, and the media was pretty much saying, well, yeah, this guy, he killed her, blah blah blah, whatever. And I didn't pay any attention to it. I thought, the guy just was some kind of animal that killed this young girl. So I didn't look into it too much. After seeing this documentary, however, I have very, very strong doubts that that everything is the way they said it did, that he did it or did everything that they claim he did. As far as his supposed accomplice, Brendan Dassey, this boy, who was 16 at the time, had a very low IQ. I believe his IQ was 70, which I don't know what qualifies as special needs or retarded or whatever you want to call him, but I know he is not a very bright person. In this documentary, you see the actual questioning of this boy, and basically the police are telling him, we know what you did, and if you tell us, we can help you and so forth and blah blah blah, and they're basically putting pressure on him, telling him that they can help him if he confesses. They're more or less almost telling him what to say. And personally, I don't believe that this boy was involved. Whether or not Steve did, I don't believe this boy was involved. I believe he was intimidated and he was coerced into a confession. That's my personal opinion. I would ask that you watch this and you make up your own mind. I highly recommend anyone to watch this, whether you have any interest at all in our legal system, or whether or not you're from the area, or there are people who are interested in this around the world right now, not just Wisconsin or the United States. So I strongly recommend that you watch this 10-part series. I know it's a long thing to watch, 10 hours, but you could watch an hour at a time or whatever, and make up your own mind what you think about this. I'm not going to, tell you that you need to think one way or the other, or I'm not going to get into any histrionics about the police or anything like that. But watch it and make up your own mind what you think, and let me know in the comments if you've watched it and what you think. And as always, comment, rate, and subscribe. And thanks for watching my videos.